fading skies. Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
What's going on, guys? Good evening and welcome to the podcast. This is another edition of Stateside Footy, and of course, I'm your host, Steve Silver. And listen, man, I hope you guys are enjoying the Tuesday. The work week has gotten off great. And over the course of the last 24 hours, we got some news from Major League Soccer as they are actually appearing to take into consideration a set of roster rules that would essentially take the training wheels off the league. And really kind of usher this league into I guess you can call it a new generation, if you will, to get to where MLS Commissioner Don Gerber has said that he believes this league is going to be, which is going to be, I guess you can say, in the top 5 or 6 leagues in the world. It seems pretty outlandish. And for me, as somebody that is kind of like, I'll see it when I type of believe it type of guy, I also, find it, whoever, I actually kind of feel like, I don't know, man, I've been sold a bill of goods before from Major League Soccer. So from that standpoint, we're going to get into that tonight because there's a few things that we have to discuss. Before I do it, please do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and also hit the notification bell. And if you guys are tuning in on TikTok Live, the link is in the description for you to head over to YouTube and take care of me. If you take care of me, I take care of you. That's what I do, man. I beg and beg for subscribers. That's just what I'm all about, man. I'm just guys. Greg 1987 is in the chat. And he says, nice emblem change for the channel. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I'm getting a little bit better at this, man. I'm getting a little bit better at that. All right, so yesterday, news broke, and I think I should give, I guess I should give Paul Torino some credit. And of course, Paul Torino is with The Athletic, and he wrote an interesting piece about the new proposals when it comes to the competition side for Major League Soccer. And of course, it is the removal of target allocation money. It's the removal of general allocation money and a streamlined salary cap. But listen, I think it's interesting that he used the term MLS 3.0. That's exactly what the bigwigs at Major League Soccer are calling this. I guess you can say it's a reset, if you will. Almost like a hard launch of moving into the next generation, because I think, if people were paying attention to the last, I guess you can say 10 to 15 years, we were, I guess, in MLS 2.0. And what that really was the expansion era, going from I remember when Seattle, of course, my beloved Sounders joined the league. There wasn't really a lot of teams in the league. I think we might have been the 17th team in the league, somewhere right around there. And of course, when you look at the structure of the league now, there's 30 teams in the league. It's healthy, I guess you can say. It's vibrant. one of the biggest things that is noticeably different is that ownership is now tracked in billions and not multi-millions. So when you look at the ownership structure around Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, you're dealing with a lot of heavy hitters that are looking at this as a vehicle to increase their capital revenue. And you have a group of progressive owners that want the training wheels to come off. Now, of course, during the expansion era, that's exactly what we had, were roster mechanisms, I call them training wheels, if you will, to essentially keep spending down. And essentially what it was, I guess you can call it sporting socialism, right? Where each individual team had to abide by the spending mechanisms, had to build their squads through, I guess you can say it was the allocation method when it comes to building the roster, whether that's target allocation or general allocation, whether it's the DPs. And now depending on your flexibility and depending on your GM, if he was smart, some teams figured out a good system and a good way to build competitive teams. Others were like, listen, man, we got 3 open spots and we're going to throw as much money at this because we need to sell season tickets and we need to sell match day revenue and we need to sell, shirts, and we need to do all of this in order to get people, to convince people to come give us their entertainment dollar. And there was a lot of successes. There's been a tremendous amount of successes around the league under that old structure. But one of the biggest issues was the competition side of things. And Major League Soccer, whether you agree with it or not, I guess in their MLS 2.0 were incredibly successful when it came to convincing billionaires to drop $500 million on not just the franchise fee, but also the capital investment to build the stadium, to build world-class training facilities. And now, of course, we have the academies as well, too. And so you look at the landscape and you look at I guess you could say the building and the foundation of what has transpired over the last 15 years. Of course, you have to look at and say, well, they've done something right. They were able to sell a product to investors, and now investors are now selling that product to the general public. And so from that, we've seen Major League Soccer become the fastest growing league in the world. And they were smart. I'll give them credit, man. They were smart when it came to cost controls, when it came to the salary cap. But now all of a sudden, Major League Soccer had 8 years of runway to get ready for this World Cup. And it's kind of interesting that they're not necessarily prepared to launch it post World Cup 2026. They're going to wait until the off season, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But what I'm actually happy about is the fact that they're actually taking competition seriously. Because as what we have right now is a league that is, whether I hate to say this or not, it is a league of haves and have-nots. Essentially, what we have is a league that is a retirement league. Teams are still spending money on aging veterans, and of course, Antoine Griezmann came this summer. Robert Lewandowski came this summer, both in their mid to late 30s, and of course, you had Thomas Muller and Sonny last year. And of course, this is going to be a continuing trend. Right, regulating how teams spend their DP salary is something the league isn't going to want to do. But then you kind of look at the youth end, and of course, Major League Soccer has done a very good job of, I would say, over the last 10 to 15 years, developing youth and moving them on. I think they have, in some pockets, have done an incredible job doing that. But in the middle, what you essentially have is a league full of MLS lifers. You have TAM level players that at one point, like in the mid 2010s, it seemed like Major League Soccer was making an effort to, potentially bring in the young South American star. And then for whatever reason, it seemed to kind of stop a little bit. And as those players grew into the league, now all of a sudden those guys are now TAM level. And so what you end up having is a league full of mid in the middle, and then you have your retirement league guys, and then you have your youngsters. And what ended up happening was it created a product that was, I hate to say this, was unwatchable in some aspects. And, you know, MLS did a terrible thing by putting it behind a paywall, which was already nerfing their commercial revenue. But that, at least that got taken care of this year. But the interesting thing about it is you were kind of wondering if Major League Soccer was spinning their wheels. And it just seemed like on a year-to-year basis, this is exactly what we got. Maybe they would have like some kind of kitschy thing where they were targeting U.S. men's national team players as they were doing from like 2013 to 2018. You know, maybe they were going to revert to go back to doing something like that. But, you know, at least they didn't do that. But the thing about this is they had spun their wheels, and we are just a few years away from not only a new CBA, which is coming on January, the next CBA expires on January 1st, 2028. And then, of course, the current television agreement ends in 2029. And what they have to do is they have to focus now on competitive, on the competition aspect of their product. They have something that they believe that is absolutely valuable. It makes no sense. This is all about increasing their television revenue. Without a doubt, right? They're giving themselves a few years to put new mechanisms in place that is going to allow teams to aggressively spend. So we are actually going to get it's still going to be a league of haves and have-nots, because let's be perfectly honest, there are going to be teams that will spend, and then there's going to be teams that won't. But it feels like what's going to end up happening is there's going to be a salary floor. So let's go ahead and get into some of these proposed roster changes. And the first one is going to be the proposal that would eliminate target allocation money, TAM, and general allocation money, which is GAM. And essentially what these are roster slots, roster mechanisms that only allow teams to spend to a certain level, right? So you can sign a TAM level player anywhere from $500,000 to, I think it's like $1.6 million. Anything over that, you would have to sign them to a DP contract. And essentially there is only a window that, there's only a bracket or, that's a good word. Like there's like a bracket of players that kind of fall into these, this category. And generally what you're seeing are journeyman players getting these contracts. Guys that might be a little bit better than league average, but not good enough to get a DP. And so what ended up happening over the course of the last 5 years, you've seen a lot of guys cycle between teams and take in these TAM contracts. And essentially it didn't do anything. It didn't necessarily do a lot of good as far as like overall growth when it comes to roster building or even elevating the level of competition. And these are supposed to be like your second best players down from DPs. And essentially what ended up happening was, teams weren't necessarily getting creative with their TAM level signings. And, there were some teams that used to do a very good job. And then of course, GM cycle in and out, and, Seattle used to be very good at doing that. They would cycle one of their DPs into a TAM level contract in order to go out and get a new DP. And so you were at the very least, what you were getting were at least high level TAM players that allowed Seattle to be super competitive there in that mid 2010s all the way into the 2020s. But then you started seeing teams like Portland and Vancouver, continue to bring in some of these veterans that quite honestly probably shouldn't be occupying these spaces. Other teams across the leagues were doing it as well too. And so we didn't get high level competition. And because there was only a certain amount of money that you can spend on these players, it was very hard to convince somebody from South America to come take that money. You certainly weren't getting players from Europe to come take that type of money. If you're trying to get those players, you probably would have had to spend on the DP. But again, nobody in Europe is going to come in the middle of their prime to take that type of money. And so teams were generally stuck with how they were going to spend their DP money was a very big precursor to how they were going to spend their TAM money. And general allocation money really is for mid players. You're talking like veteran minimum type of players, guys who most likely are kind of washed, or guys that never will be. You know what I mean? But that being said, it's like you got to build out a defense, and certain teams that spend all their money in the attack, you got to build out your defense some way or another. And usually it was used by general allocation money, or they would trade international roster spots for general allocation money. That's usually what the mechanism has seemed to be, to me, at least for the last couple of years, is like, teams trading roster spots for extra games so they can bring in, a backup center back or whatever the case may be. But under this proposal, it would eliminate all of it. And so essentially what it would end up being is, if you have a $25 million salary cap, well, you have 23 spots on your first team roster. Spend that money any which way, build a roster any which way. And what I like about this is you're going to see creative GMs do a very fantastic job. And what this is actually going to do is it is going to be able, your teams are going to be able to now to be able to have depth. They're going to be able to have balance, and they're going to get better quality through the door. And one of the things that I like about this, especially for MLS fans that are big fans of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, this right here, just the removal of these two right here, are going to put MLS teams in a little bit better of an advantageous spot to be able to win that tournament a little bit more regularly. Because as of right now, we just don't have the balance to be able to compete, nor do we have the depth. And let's be perfectly honest, we really don't have the quality either. And with just getting rid of these two would go a very, 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 very long way in really upping the quality of the product that you see on the pitch, right? So I'll give you a good example, right? Seattle right now is having a really tough time selling tickets because there's just not a lot of faith in ownership or even their GM. But that being said, if they were to do something crazy, like actually bring in a competent GM that actually has a blank space, a blank slate, not only are we going to be able to cycle off through some bad players or aging players or injury-riddled players, but now all of a sudden we don't have these roster mechanisms that are going to be hampering our ability to go out and actually get quality. And so for some teams, like a Seattle that is kind of spinning their wheels as like anywhere between a fourth and maybe a sixth place team, what this is going to do is allow those type of teams to be able to level up. Without a doubt. The second proposal is to streamline the salary cap structure. And when I saw this one for me was the thing that I've been banging the drum on for at least 5 years. And that is because it's obvious we have the money in this league. When you look at some of the business that this team has done, that this league has done, especially when it comes to DP contracts, you can't tell me that this league doesn't have the ability to spend. They do. They just choose not to. And because your salary cap is so low, this season the salary cap was at $6.4 million. That's non-DP. That's your non-DP cap. $6.4 million to build a 23 to 25 man first team. That's not gonna cut it. Under this structure, essentially what this would look like is there would be a salary floor, meaning there is a minimum that you have to spend, and then there's going to be essentially a high bar or a hard cap. And every single year, the cap would go up, which would be a percentage of that revenue growth on a year-to-year basis. And it would essentially mimic that of the NFL and the NBA and the NHL, because they have mechanisms in their cap where, depending on the overall growth of revenue, that cap is going to move up. But the thing about this is there's from the way that I read it, there's going to be safeguards in place that will not, that will not allow teams to spend more than they're capable of spending, right? The cap is going to be at a number where you're going to see growth revenue wise, but you're also teams are not going to be in a position where they feel like they have to keep up with the Joneses in order to be able to have their rosters improve, where owners are taking a massive hit because maybe they didn't get the revenue that they were forecasting. And a lot of this is part and parcel to the new television deal that's coming out. So I think it's this year, Major League Soccer, I think they're being paid by Apple $200 million for their TV deal this year. That works out to about $6.6 million per team. So there you go, right? You can understand why the cap is exactly where it's at, because under this proposal, this current deal, that's those are hard figures. Next year for the sprint season, they're only getting 175 million, so it's going to be a little less. And then in 2027, 2028, it goes to 275, 28, 29, it's going to be again at 275. And then Major League Soccer is going to try to renegotiate. Now, this is going to be interesting, right? Are they going to stick with a streaming service, i.e. like a YouTube TV or a Netflix, maybe even a Hulu type of deal, and get get that type of money? Or are they going to try to go back to a traditional television model, a Fox Sports or an ESPN or whatever the case may be? And the thing that is going to be potentially put them at an advantageous position is if they go ahead and approve these measures that we have been talking about, because essentially what you're going to do is give your league 2 years of runway to build up that quality and build up that depth. The biggest thing what this has the potential to do is open up the door to Europe as well too. So from that standpoint, when they go to that negotiating table in 2.5 years, and they can tangibly point to the fact that we have 20 teams in the league currently that are at max cap. But when you start looking at some of these matrix, you look at the goal matrix, you look at the names that they're kind of bringing in. All of a sudden, Major League Soccer could be in an advantageous position where they might be able to potentially get $500 million a season. And of course, when you start talking those type of numbers, now all of a sudden you're at that 15 to 20 million a year number for each team that are just sitting there getting that money in the cut. And of course, when you look at match day revenue, season tickets, shirt sales, and all those other things, you can envision a scenario where the salary cap starts like at 25 million, because teams are going to be able to cover it. And I like that. The thing that I like is the salary floor, because there's at least a mechanism in place for cheap owners where they can't necessarily be cheap. You know what I mean? If you're like, for instance, if you're saying, okay, cool, your hard cap is 25, but you have to spend a minimum of 12.5 or 15, like you actually have to give your fans something to show up for. And if you don't, and if you come under that number, you're going to hit the luxury tax threshold. Also, if you go over, you're going to hit the luxury tax, and all that money gets put into a pot, and that goes to revenue sharing, which gives another mechanism for teams to actually make a little bit more money. So from that standpoint, these are what I would consider the way that you grow your competition. Because again, Major League Soccer is past the training wheel stage. We actually have been past the training wheels for 10 years now. But nobody at Major League Soccer wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to admit it. But when you start seeing cities, cities build soccer specific stadium for these teams, when you see privatized ownership coming in and building these stadiums, when you see the training ground, it's like, dude, we've been there for quite a long time now, for at least 5, if not 10. And for the last couple years, you've seen Miami spend and you've seen LA spend. But really, it's like, it's more than that, right? There's at least 10 teams that I know of right now that if these things were enacted tomorrow, during the summer transfer window, you would see so much goddamn movement coming into Major League Soccer. Like phones would start ringing if these things these things were enacted. But the way that this thing is going to set up is in the off season, it's going to get approved. We're going to have the sprint season from February to May, and then we go into the off season. And then that's where you're going to see a tremendous amount of transfer activity. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw like something absolutely crazy, like, I don't know, like $500 million worth of transfer business happening in that first transfer window. In that first transfer window, it wouldn't surprise me if we got insane numbers. But, that being said, it's like, it's all part and parcel to the commercial revenue that this league is generating. And when you hear individual teams or somebody say that a certain team isn't profitable, throw that into the garbage, because there's just zero chance that they're not profitable. 100% they're profitable. I also want to talk about this right here, which is Major League Soccer would keep the DP spots in place. And they're talking about what they're going to do, and the mechanisms that are going to allow Major League Soccer teams to keep their youth players. And that's why they're going to keep the 3 DP spots. Me personally, I like to see them drop to 1. Because under the new salary cap structure, there should be no problems keeping your youth players. Because if you sign a youngster to essentially a U22 spot, essentially what they are they count as young DPs. And so, these 16, 17-year-old kids are, making well over 1.5. But that's why they want to keep these DP spots in. Because if you want to use them for a big name, then you can go use them for a big name. And of course that money won't count against your cap. The same rules will apply to the DP, right? So if there's a 25 million cap and you go out there and you spend $50 million on a player, that 50 is not going to count against your cap. That being said, if you also want to use your DPs to retain a young, so like for instance, right? And it will never happen, but I'm just saying, for instance, let's just throw this out there. Let's just say Philadelphia wanted to keep Kevin Sullivan for the next 5 years, and maybe extend his stay in MLS. Like he can't, because I think he's going to City. But for instance, if they wanted to extend it under these rules, they would be able to use a DP spot in order to keep them, and essentially, give the fans of Philadelphia a couple extra years of his service. But the reality is, I don't necessarily know how I feel about 3 DP spots. There are ways, like under a streamlined salary cap structure, you're going to be able to retain your youth. Like there should be no reason why you wouldn't be able to do it. And especially if you're talking like, for instance, like, if you're talking like 18 over 5, you should be able to get away with paying an 18, 19-year-old kid a couple $1 million a season while still being able to build out a roster that's going to have quality and depth around that kid. Like there should be no reason for multiple DP spots. But that being said, it's like, what's interesting is what's going to be interesting is under this new salary cap structure is whether we're going to see teams using DP spots potentially for defenders, which is something we haven't really seen. Usually it goes to attacking positions. Every once in a while, you'll get the Sergio Busquets. You know what I mean? You'll get one of those type of DPs because they had no choice but to do it to get them to come. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly if this will attract defender DPs, because if you're trying to build out an attack and maybe you're able to finesse a couple South American wonder kids, and maybe they're only making $500,000 for the first season, and maybe it jumps to a couple $1,000,000 in the next, the third, or whatever. You're going to eventually have that flexibility, that initial flexibility, where maybe you throw a DP spot at a central defender. Maybe there's somebody overseas that you're looking at, and he wants like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, and maybe you're gonna throw a DP spot at a central defender. You know what I mean, or a keeper. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how teams are going to use these DP spots now, where you can understand why they were using for attackers in the first place. Obviously, you're trying to score goals and you're trying to win trophies, but now all of a sudden it kind of changes the complexity of the situation now. So that's kind of interesting. That is absolutely kind of interesting. Let's go hit the chat. Let's see. Wayne Bonner, hope you're doing well. My guy, Nateski. Nateski's in the house. RIFC TID, Rhode Island FC. My guy, Nateski, is bringing in the USL Championship. And, of course, this is also interesting timing as well, too. These roster rules are very interesting, that all of a sudden we're hearing it now, considering that in about a year and a half, USL is launching their Premier Division, and promotion and relegation is coming to the United States. Now, it's going to only be through 3 divisions to start in the USL. But that being said, it seems a little peculiar that all of a sudden we're starting to hear about this now, as the USL are starting to ramp up their march to promotion and relegation. And I'm wondering if that played a decision in what MLS is now. All of a sudden they feel like they're hell bent on competition now. User says academies are key for MLS. 300 million people start developing young players, and the league will grow. Yeah. MLS Next Pro will play a huge part in this. I'd imagine increased money means which means increased revenues for your academy, which means you can hire better coaches, which means you can hire better scouts. And at that standpoint, since academies are free, maybe this will also create extra age divisions, maybe even a little bit younger. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the chat will get me. I believe the lowest age division right now is 12. I think it might be lower, but you can conceivably go to the 8-year-old age range, if you really want to do it. If you really want to do it correct. But yeah, that's the thing. It's Major League Soccer absolutely needs to continue doing, laying the groundwork when it comes to the youth. We see them do a good job already. All the young stars that have already graduated into first teams that are getting excellent first team minutes. And those that have already moved to Europe, those that are going to move to Europe. So from that standpoint, I think Major League Soccer has done not necessarily terrible in that department. I think USL does a good job of that too. I think that is something that they need to double down on, if I'm being perfectly honest, because half of the, as far as I'm concerned, half of your league should be, as far as player goes, half should be young players on rosters. If you have a 25-man roster, the last 8 to 10 should be youth players, without a doubt. This would be an excellent time to essentially weed Major League Soccer out of your, essentially what I like to consider your 28, 29-year-old journeyman. That 100% they're not going to Europe. 100% they're not going to be involved in the national team setup. And so they're literally just playing soccer, getting paid. I don't have a problem with that. But that being said, there's another first division that's coming in a year and a half. And a lot of those teams are going to need to build initial rosters. So if you're talking about just hanging on for a few more years and collecting a paycheck, there's going to be plenty of teams where you can do that on. But if this is a statement of intent for Major League Soccer, I'd much rather see young kids fail and develop using those roster spots than, a guy that is not necessarily elevating your roster. He's just there. It's like, for instance, I'll give you a good example, like Hassani Dotson. No disrespect to Hassani, but if you're a Sounders fan, man, you kind of feel my pain. He is the definition of a journeyman MLS player, and he does absolutely nothing for the Sounders. He was there because we lost Obed Vargas, so we had a need in the central midfield, but he has absolutely done nothing to elevate the club. Elevate the team. And it makes absolutely no sense. I would much rather see a young kid in that position getting time, without a doubt. But it is what it is. I digress. Like, that's the thing, is there's plenty of Hassani Dotsons in this league that do absolutely nothing for the bottom floor of this team except for eat up salary. And I would rather see the door open up again to South America. I'd like to see the door opened up to potentially Africa. That might be pretty cool, but also Europe as well too. I would be remiss if I wouldn't say that Major League Soccer scouts should be in the Netherlands. They should be in Germany, in Italy, looking at second division talent. Young second division talent, getting them to the United States for their first, I guess you can say, big payday. And developing those players and selling them on, as well as cultivating young talent here in the United States as well too, without a doubt. Like, the way that I look at this is we're opening up doors that we haven't had the balls to open up because we were afraid of potentially sinking the league. And that might have been true. By the way, that could have been true in 2007, 2008. 2009, that could have been true. But, right around 2016, the league stabilized. And so for 10 years, we have been operating not just in a stable league, but with roster mechanisms that wouldn't allow teams to fail. Like, if teams failed, it's because they're in a bad market and, they're not doing enough to draw fans. That would be the only way a team would fail. But for the most part, every team has been successful. There has been a modicum of success for every single team. And, maybe we can talk about the Canadian teams because they operate a little differently. They pay their players in American dollars, but yet their revenue comes in Canadian. So yeah, like, maybe we can talk about the fluctuation of the Canadian market teams. But even then, even though that Montreal has been one of the worst teams in the history of Major League Soccer, they're still profitable. You know what I mean? Like, you can't spin it. But I digress. One of the things that is going to be interesting is when this does go to a vote, it's going to be interesting to see who votes no, because I would probably assume there's going to be some no votes because it goes to the competition committee. The committee is responsible for outlining all these changes, and then it goes to a league-wide vote. And it's going to be interesting to see exactly the owners that don't like it. I heard that when the schedule changed, there was a lot of pushback from owners that are I like to call them the status quo crew. There was a lot of owners that wanted to keep the February to, I guess you can say, November schedule because in their markets, they didn't want to have to compete with either the NBA or the NFL. But, the interesting thing about it is that we're not going to, because when we make the calendar switch next year, I would find it very hard to believe that we're going to play games on Saturday or Sunday. I don't believe it. especially in the fall, I don't believe it, because we're not going to. I do not think that we're going to. I don't believe that we're going to do ourselves any favors by scheduling night games on a Saturday and going up against ESPN or whoever's like primetime college football game. We're not going to do that. We're certainly not doing it on a Sunday during football season. I would probably assume that our games are going to drop either on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Friday. That's what I believe. And then, of course, when we get into the CONCACAF Champions League, which I believe is in February, that's going to be interesting as well, too, to see how they schedule it. The only question that I have with the new schedule is how are we going to get off Leagues Cup? Like, I can see Leagues Cup ending when Leagues Cup ending. And because I think it would be a little bit easier to schedule the U.S. Open Cup versus, stopping your league, playing a tournament. It's like it doesn't make any sense. And I highly doubt we're going to finish the season in May and then do Leagues Cup in June. I can't imagine even doing that. Let's see. You are skinnier than tomorrow. Congratulations, buddy. I don't know what that means. You think I'm skinnier? Okay. I appreciate that. Let's see. Bearrat says Diego Rossi's greater than Messi. Okay. Let's see. Portugal and France produce the best players. Yeah. But let me ask you this question, user 42 whatever. Let's see. Do you think that right now Major League Soccer could afford a 19-year-old French player that's playing in Ligue 2? I don't think they probably could. Then again, could we afford a young 19-year-old player that his trajectory is the Bundesliga, maybe in 2 years, and he's playing in the second, the 2 Bundesliga, and he's only making $500K a year? You think we might be able to afford him? I think we could. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be certain nations that produce very good footballers that we're going to have access to now. For me, I think that is. I think that with these salary cap, the new streamlined salary cap, and with the with no TAM and GAM, it's going to open up the door to Europe. Let's see. Let's go back. Leagues Cup is a Mickey Mouse Cup, without a doubt. It's a Mickey Mouse tournament. And the interesting thing is Liga MX doesn't even want to play in it. And we know this because look at the way Liga MX treats the CONCACAF Champions Cup versus the way that they treat Leagues Cup. They don't want to be there. And I think this year we're going to see games being played in Mexico. So maybe that actually helps a little. But the reality is they don't want to be there. I think it bleeds into their off season. The last thing they really want to do is play football. So, and you can see it in the group stage games. Like, I remember this was like last year. This was funny as hell. So we played Cruz Azul in the CONCACAF Champions Cup in 2 legs, and we got our doors blown off of us, man. I think we lost 4-1 on aggregate. They absolutely beat us up. And then we played them in the group stage of the Leagues Cup, and we beat them 7-1. They just didn't show. They didn't care. They didn't care if they won or lost. And that's just I think it's now through 3 iterations of the Leagues Cup, we haven't had a Mexican team in the semifinal. It's been all MLS semifinals. It's like, yeah, they don't care. Let's see. Any opinions? Oh, that kid is so sick. Thank you. Yeah, this is the last year's Sounders 3rd jersey, and it was an homage to the old Sounders. The old A-League Sounders from back in the 90s. And, of course, they have Sammy the Sounder. It's one of my favorite kids. Let's see. Any thoughts on the EFL? Yeah, this is going to be this year in the championship, it's going to be unbelievable football this year. I think realistically, you have 6 teams that are capable of automatic promotion. Of course, you have West Ham, who is probably going to be one of your favorites for automatic promotion this year. I'm not necessarily sold on Wolves, but that being said, you have Wrexham, you have Middlesbrough, you have Millwall. There are a tremendous amount of teams in the championship that are capable of getting automatic promotion. Wrexham is another one of them, right? So I think when you look at the top 10 within the championship, most of those teams are capable of getting automatic promotion, at least getting to the playoffs. And then when you look at the bottom half of the championship, there really isn't any true, like, legit relegation teams, like teams that are so bad. Like Sheffield Wednesday last year, but they were also on a transfer ban and a points deduction for going into administration. Their relegation was assured. But this year, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there are any, like, really true, the definition of relegation teams. I actually think the teams that came up from League One, so you're talking about Lincoln, I would probably assume that we're going to see some yo-yo teams this year. That's a good division. Thoughts on Argentina? That's crazy. Personally, I think Argentina should be given a ban, whether that is Copa America in 2 years or the next World Cup. Their behavior post England wasn't great, and then of course their behavior after the final again wasn't great, and this shows you the weakness of FIFA. Some people will say corruption, whatever adjective you want to use. I'm not going to argue with you, but that being said, it's like they crashed out hard towards the latter end of this World Cup, and that's the thing. It's like you can't have that type of behavior at this level of competition. It's like, I understand you're frustrated, 100%, I get it, but the reality is, the whole Falkland Islands situation. Then you had the fights and the dirty behavior after the final. Like FIFA should have stepped in and said, "Listen, man, we're banning you from competition. We're going to give you we're going to dock you 12 points, whatever the case may be. And if Common Bowl won't, I guess you can say, uphold it, then it goes to the next World Cup. FIFA has set precedents with that. I mean, I remember in 1990, they banned Mexico from Italia 90 because they fielded an overage player in a youth tournament. Like, that's all it took for Mexico to get banned from the World Cup. So, I mean, granted, it's a different era, different generation. I get it. Precedence has been set. But that being said, it's like, yeah, me personally, I'm also a no nonsense type of guy. So personally, I don't know, man. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's the way I feel. Love the jersey, but Timbers clear. I don't care about the Timbers. Timbers are mid. Which Prem team do you like? I'm a Spurs supporter, so there you go. Love me some Spurs. Derby County, yeah. See, I like Derby County. And of course, Patrick Agyemang is on Derby County, but I don't know, man. Like, I watched Derby a lot last year, and I came away impressed quite a bit with Derby County. Again, when I think about the championship as a whole, it's like, again, you can go through the top 10 of the championship, and you can be like, yeah, okay, most of these teams have a case for automatic promotion. Derby is one of them, and I wouldn't be shocked if Norwich actually has a really good team this year. Who do you think is the worst ever coach of a U.S. soccer coach? That would be Steve Sampson, who was the head coach from 95 through the 98 World Cup. Easily the worst. Let's see. Jaden, the man, says Friday high school is Friday Night Lights. Yeah, by the way, that's not going to matter. I guarantee you Major League Soccer would have no problem going up against high school football. Now, granted, like if you're in Texas, so if you're like Houston, Austin, or FC Dallas, yeah, okay, maybe, but also understand that in Dallas and Houston, they're not exactly ran great at the moment. So who knows if these new rules would change the way that they would change their way of operating. Yes, I mean they would have more flexibility. So maybe they potentially bring up some good players from Liga MX, maybe. But I don't know. I don't think I don't necessarily think it's going to matter in those markets. But I will say it's like, let me ask you a question real quick. So, do you think high school football is big in Seattle and Portland versus, Friday night lights at the stadium to go watch your soccer team? I don't know. Let's see. DEFCON said Argentina banned the qualifying. I understand. They're automatic qualifiers, which is why they're not going to do it. Which is why they're not doing it. Let's see. Thoughts on what Derby went through in 2021 with 21 points docked and near extinction. That might have been harsh, man. That might have been harsh. That's the thing. It's like I think Southampton needs to get the 12-point treatment and a transfer ban this year. Sheffield Wednesday got all of that for going into administration for, I guess you can say, gross mismanagement. And they were assured of their relegation. But that being said, Southampton also literally cheated by spying on their opponents. And you can say that their punishment was being taken out of the championship playoff final, but it should also carry over into the season as well too. And I wouldn't mind seeing anywhere between a 6 to 12 point ban and a transfer ban. I think that's agreeable. But what Derby County went through in 2021, a 21 point docking is criminal. That's criminal, man. Let's see. Yeah, I know they got a 4-point deduction. Yeah, that's nothing. You can make up your 4 points with one win, essentially. Let's see. Are you going to watch Liga MX All-Stars versus MLS All-Star game tomorrow? I'm not. I don't like All-Star games. I think they're dumb. What I would like is a skills competition. That would be pretty dope if they figured out like an individual skills competition where you actually get to see certain quality of players in Major League Soccer. I think that would be pretty cool. Or if you're going to have a game, do what they used to do and schedule the MLS All-Stars. Okay, well, there you go. They have a skills competition. It just lets you know how much I just don't watch All-Star. What they used to do was you would have an MLS All-Star team and then you would have like a traveling EPL team. Like I remember one year we played Everton, one year we played United. I'd be cool with that. And I think Liga MX All-Star team, I think they had like 8 to 10 dudes that pulled out of it because they didn't want to participate in it. And it's like, oh, yeah, Liga MX doesn't care. They just don't care about Major League Soccer. And I don't blame them either. Yeah, so that's cool. So the skills competition to stay. Okay, fair enough, man. I just don't watch the All-Star. I don't watch the All-Star competitions, or I don't watch the All-Star festivities because I think it's a waste of time personally. I think the last one, what was the last All-Star game I watched in Major League Soccer? It's been a while, man. It's been a while. But also it's like, it's not conducive to the sport of soccer. All-Star games are not conducive. Like this isn't Major League Baseball. It's not, even the NFL got rid of the Pro Bowl. You know what I mean? Because nobody cared about it. I guess, the interesting thing though, is that I guess I got a question for you guys, and maybe this is my last thought on this, is that even with the even with the proposal to eliminate TAM, to eliminate GAM, and to eliminate or essentially streamline a salary cap that would allow teams the ability to spend and raise the level of competition, it still doesn't do anything to address the issue of games of consequence. I think a part of this you'll see and Major League Soccer get realigned. So you instead of having essentially conferences, you'll have divisions. And I would probably assume that, me being a Sounder fan, you would have like a Northwest division. So it'd be like, it would be like Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, and like maybe San Jose or something like that. But the interesting thing about this is in a division model, most of the competition would still be on you would play the bulk of your games on your coast. So if you're in the Northwest Division, you would play the Pacific Division. You would play the Midwest, which I would probably assume would have like the Texas teams or something like that. Whatever the case may be, you would play the bulk of your games, and so it would regionalize the game. That's great. It would cut down on your travel cost. Okay, that's great too. But one of the things it will do is it would water down rivalry games. So if you're in a division, if you're Seattle and you're in a division with Portland, you're probably going to see Portland 6 times a year, if not more. And so does that water down the rivalry? Does it water down Cascadia? You know what I mean? Like that is, the what I like about it is the scarcity of the games that are already being played. Not to mention if we like meet up with one of those guys in the playoffs or something like that, right? So, you would have because we're going to an August to May, we're going to the European calendar. Now all of a sudden you have to worry not only about your division games, but if you're in the North, during the winter months you're going to be traveling. Right. Which, there's going to be a logistical way in order for you to make sure that, you don't the Northern teams will be in the South during the December and February months. I'm sure in January, there'll be a 2-week midwinter break, potentially over the holidays. Or maybe what they'll end up doing is maybe what's going to end up happening is we'll take like a month off. Something like that, where because Camp Cupcake is now in December, so I wonder if we're going to end up having like a month off where it's like we'll have that international window for Major League Soccer, and then we'll have that winter break, and then when we come back, it's going to be like mid-January, and so you're just essentially like 3 or 4 weeks away from potential weather turning, right? So. There's ways that you're going to be able to do it and schedule it so, we're not playing in, minus 10 degree weather in Montreal or Toronto or in Colorado or anything like that, or in Minnesota, whatever the case may be. But it still doesn't address the elephant in the room, and that is games of consequence. Because I don't think that going to a division format is going to help create games of consequence. If anything, I think we're in this weird era right now where the only sport where everybody pays attention to the regular season is the NFL, because they only play 18 of them. And so from that standpoint, every week has potential, every week has potential playoff you get what I'm saying. It's like they have playoff implications. That's the word I'm looking for, right? Implications. Where because the scarcity of games, there's only a certain amount of them. Fans get glued to them. But when you look at sports that have regular seasons that last a while, i.e. Major League Baseball, there's 162 of them. The NBA, the NHL have 82, and Major League Soccer currently has 38. But with the extended formats, you're playing into the 50s, right? nobody really gives a shit about the NBA regular season. They don't, right? Most people, like when they get their best ratings, it's usually in the playoffs. Most people will take a month or two off in the baseball regular season because, either your team is already out of it and it's Memorial Day, or, you can come back at the All-Star break and your team is still going to be within 5 games of first place, and you only got a couple months left in the season where you can do that, right? I think because of the closed single entity of Major League Soccer, I get the impression that, especially the way that the league is played right now, nobody gives a shit about the first half of the season anyways. Most people don't come in until the summer transfer window, and then you get into September, because then it's a sprint to the playoffs, right? So that's the thing. It's like I feel like that's going to continue. I'm not going to get into the whole pro-rel debate, but what I will say is that even going to a division format, it's still not going to be able to create genuine interest. Like, yes, you're going to have soccer fans who are going to watch it. All that's great. And there are going to be fun matchups in the regular season, no doubt about that. But that being said, if all of this is for regionalizing it, creating divisions, if all of this leads to 60% of the league getting to the playoffs anyways, what is it going to matter? You know what I mean? Like that has to be looked at, right? Where, you can have a scenario where division winners get in, because obviously, like, the regular season has to mean something. So winning your division has to mean something. And then, like, for instance, it's, so you have like 6 divisions of 5, because you got 30 teams. You have 6 divisions of 5, and then maybe you have 6 division winners, and then maybe you have like a couple wild cards, like 4 wild cards. Like, it's like 4 of the best second place teams get in, depending on whatever, or you have like a playoff to get in, something like that, where you get what I'm saying? It's like maybe you have like a small little playoff, and then 4 teams get in, but you only have like 10 playoff spots altogether. And then it's literally just a shootout until you get to the final. But, that's the thing. It's like, if this is a situation where we have 60% of the teams getting in, the regular season isn't going to matter at all. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like, that's my biggest fear. Like, all of this roster talk is great. And by the way, I'm for every single one of these changes, and I think it is going to enhance the competition. And I think teams are going to get creative in roster building, and I think it opens the door to Europe. But it's not going to, like, I don't think you're going to change casual fans' opinions on this one, or at least in the idea like you should watch our regular season. I don't think it's going to matter, because they're just going to wait to the playoffs. That's kind of the era. That's kind of the era in sports that we're kind of in right now. I know. Like, right now, it's like Major League Soccer. As of right now, like, nobody really starts watching until after Leagues Cup. Maybe they start tuning in during Leagues Cup, but the reality is, it's like that's the time of year where casual soccer fans will tune in, because now it's just, we have 1 month, which is a sprint, and then you get to the playoffs. There's no point watching in March, April, May. There's just no point, right? And we see some of our worst soccer in the early portion of the season. So we'll see how it goes. But let's see. Keyshawn says, like, have a plan. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like the championship, where you have your automatics, and then you have your 4-team, or now it's going to be like an 8-team playoff for your final promotion, right? So it'd be almost a little bit like that, right? Where it's like, you have 6 division winners, and then you have like a 16 playoff for the final 4 spots. You know what I mean? And it's single elimination, so you don't need to do a best of 3. It's literally just single elimination. And then that's it. Then you have your 10 playoff teams, and then you can reseed them then, depending on record, and then that's it. Single elimination. You don't need to have, or if you want to go back to the home and home, you can do that as well too. I wouldn't mind that. Me personally, it literally should be single elimination until you get to the final. I don't know. Let's see. Do they have that jersey without the V-neck collar? They do not. Up Chelsea. As a diehard Timbers fan, that kit you have on is so clean. Thank you. Portland has had some pretty nice kits over the course of their lifetime in Major League Soccer. Oh yeah, or like whatever. You can do that too. You can have 5 divisions of 6 or 6 divisions of 5. Either way. But yeah, like you would have regionalized divisions. So you would have like maybe you have I don't know, like you would have like the Pacific Division, where it'd be like Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, San Jose, both LA teams, and San Diego. You know what I mean? Something like that. And you would play the bulk of your season in division, and you would be centrally located on the West Coast if you're a West Coast team. For the bulk of the season, you wouldn't travel past Kansas City. Like you would play most of your half in the western part of the United States. You would make 1 East Coast trip per year, 1 Southern trip. You know what I mean? Something like that. So anyway, interesting conversation. But again, I really do believe that I think these rules are going to happen. I think this upcoming offseason, we will see the end of target allocation money and general allocation money. I think we're going to see a restructuring of the salary cap that are going to allow teams to be competitive. And I also think that it opens the door to Europe in a big way. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to be shopping in England. I don't think that's going to happen. But, could this open up the Eredivisie for the United States and, Italy? Maybe even, I wouldn't say Serie A, but like Serie B, the French Ligue 1, 100%. The German second division, of course, man. The Belgian Pro League, 100%. That is a good place to start, because there's incredibly good young talent that could be had that would easily raise the profile of this league. So from that standpoint, I think these rules are going to happen. These competition changes, and I'm glad that Major League Soccer is doing it because. And again, I think this has been the case for 10 years. Maybe you say 5, okay? But we've been in such a stable position that we could have done this 5 years ago. And I think the interesting thing is, like, when you hear Don Garber speak, it was like the last 10, 15 years, it was about infrastructure. Like MLS 2.0 was about infrastructure, getting the right investment into the league, i.e. billionaires, and making sure that cities played their part in making sure stadiums got built, training grounds got built, so academies can get set up. And so you actually have top flight infrastructure within the league. That was absolutely important for the growth. But that being said, you easily could have made the argument by 2020, 2021, that was already there. And so from that standpoint, like, this could have happened sooner. And I always say, it's like, once we got word of the World Cup this year, and Major League Soccer had 8 years of runway to do this. But I guess it's better late than never. I do wonder if, this has anything to do with USL's promotion relegation, because they're coming in 27, 28. So it's, we're talking about like another year and a half away. So the timing kind of seems to work out a little bit, but maybe that's just me and my conspiracy theory. Champions Cup shouldn't be when the season starts. Yeah, I agree. and it would stay exactly where it's at, right? So we'd be in mid-season. We'd be in mid-season form when we play in the Champions Cup. So we're getting Mexican teams exactly when, you know, they were in mid-season form. So it's going to be interesting, man. But that's going to do it for me. Please do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. And if you're on TikTok, the link is in the description. And hopefully you hook a brother up. All right, guys, that was fun conversation tonight. I will be back probably on Thursday, but most definitely this weekend, because we got a lot of cool stuff we're going to be talking about over the weekend. So listen, man, all you have to do is head over to Stateside Footy. And while you're there, obviously, hit that subscribe button, but also look out for upcoming shows this week. And I believe Adam Turner is joining me on Saturday as we talk about the national team. So that should be fun. All right, guys, take care. Have a good night.
Rusted goalposts under fading skies, tattered flags waving dreams in our